All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We are looking at a completely insane story of transformation. I mean, we're talking about a pathetic, severely bullied nerd who somehow becomes the most dangerous, feared fighter in his entire high school in just a few short months. It's an absolute masterclass in pushing past your physical limits and using pure, calculated strategy to take down overwhelming raw power. So how does a turnaround like this even begin? Well, it all starts with a pretty crazy hypothetical situation. What happens when an absolute MMA prodigy literally moves into your empty bedroom? Our main guy, Kim, is a straight A student, but he is dealing with apocalyptic levels of bullying. His day-to-day life is just a complete nightmare, where he's treated like absolute trash. Then, completely out of the blue, this girl named Lee moves into his house. She is a fierce, highly trained MMA fighter, but there's a catch. Kim quickly realizes she's basically reading at an elementary school level. And that right there leads to a desperate, completely life-changing deal. It's the ultimate trade, brains for brawn. Kim agrees to tutor Lee in basic English and math, so she doesn't flunk out of her classes. And in exchange, Lee agrees to teach Kim how to fight, just so he can survive his daily beatings at school. Honestly, it's a match made in heaven. But they don't have forever. To face his first real boss, this guy Joe Sangbaum, who's the school's absolute top bully, Lee gives Kim a strict deadline, exactly 1 month. The prep is grueling. It's a literal ticking clock. Week 1 is all about nailing the basics, just mastering the 1-2 punch and a solid low kick. By week 2, things escalate into crazy speed and stamina conditioning. I'm talking running upstairs while literally carrying her on his back. And by week 4, they zero in on groin tackles and, crucially, mental fortitude. Because as Lee drills into his head, the second your mind breaks, the fight is over. And wow, is that mental toughness immediately put to the test. During his first real, bloody fight with Songbom, Kim gets totally dominated right out of the gate. He gets caught in a nasty guillotine choke, the kind that can literally put you to sleep in 7 seconds. But Kim, he doesn't break. He forces himself to survive that initial wave of panic and then deploys a secret weapon. He takes Lee's heated lighter and burns Songbom's arm to shatter that terrifying hold. The moment he's free, he counters with a sharp low kick to destroy the bully's balance and finishes the whole thing off with a clean chin strike. Boom, first boss down. Of course, an incredible, shocking victory like that makes Kim famous overnight. But you know how it goes. Fame brings an even bigger target on your back. Enter boss number 2, Hung Dabong. 110 kilograms. That is the massive, terrifying weight of this giant from Busan. And Dabong decides he needs to make a brutal example out of Kim. He publicly humiliates him, literally forcing Kim to swallow a live spider just to send a message that, in his eyes, losers are always going to stay losers. So how do you prepare for a massive weight and power gap like that? Well, Lee's advice is brutally strict and honestly kind of hilarious. She just tells him, eat a lot and put these on. She forces Kim into this torturous training regimen where he has to hold an invisible chair squatting posture everywhere he goes. And if that wasn't enough, he's wearing these ridiculous giant 5-kilogram gloves on each hand. That is 10 extra kilos of dead weight he's just lugging around all day, every day, specifically to build up the defensive muscle he'll need to absorb hits from a literal heavyweight. Then, the bell rings. Kim's survival strategy instantly kicks into gear. He uses those massive, heavy gloves to block and exhaust the giant for exactly 30 seconds. The split-second Dabong's stamina drops, Kim strikes with a vicious headbutt. But it kind of backfires. Dabong falls forward, crushing Kim under all that massive weight. But remember his training. Using a newly learned jujitsu hip bridge, Kim manages to escape from underneath. And then comes the absolute game changer. Dabong yanks those giant gloves off Kim to use them for himself. But without that 10-kilogram burden holding him down, Kim suddenly becomes insanely, unbelievably fast. It's such a brilliant lesson in tactical adaptation. See, Dabong has this thick layer of body fat that basically absorbs normal punches like a giant sponge. So Kim totally shifts his tactics. He surgically targets the giant's unpadded joints. He kicks his knees until you can practically hear them crack, drives a pinpoint punch straight into his solar plexus to completely knock the wind out of him, and finishes with a brutal knee to the chin to chop the giant down for good. Just like that, 2 bosses down. But what do you do when the bully is actually hiding behind a friendly smile? Right when Kim starts to think he's finally safe, he meets boss number 3, Hansel. Now, Hansel acts like a total fanboy. He offers to be friends, flatters Kim, even takes him to a PC cafe. But underneath that nice guy act, he is a deeply manipulative, venomous fake friend. The mask eventually slips, he dumps food on Kim, insults Lee behind her back, and then, this is the craziest part, right before challenging Kim to a formal fight, Hansel secretly stuffs broken glass into Kim's left shoe. So now, Kim is bleeding in agonizing pain and can't even step properly. He is getting absolutely destroyed by Hansel's boxing. But suddenly, a spark of muscle memory kicks in from a random sparring session he had with Lee's left-handed friend Sarah. In a split second, Kim dynamically shifts his footing. He switches from his traditional orthodox stance straight into a southpaw stance. This incredible, on-the-fly tactical pivot perfectly protects his injured foot and totally throws off Hansel's entire rhythm. It just goes to show how adapting to your disadvantages mid-fight can literally turn everything around. Hansel quickly realizes he's losing control of the fight, so he embraces a really dark truth. Street fights have absolutely no rules. He literally picks up a bicycle and smashes it into Kim. No joke, a whole bicycle. But Kim stays hyper-focused. Using Sarah's exact strategy for left-handed fighters, he strategically baits Hansel into pinning him against the wall. He waits for Hansel to throw this wide, arrogant punch, and then, wham! He delivers a brutal, anger-fueled left-hand counter straight to Hansel's jaw, ending the fight. Okay, let's look at the real consequence of all these back-to-back victories. Because by beating the absolute toughest guys in school, Kim unknowingly makes himself the ultimate target for Invincible. This is a massive, highly dangerous school gang alliance, and their entrance exam is totally twisted. Any aspiring thug who wants to join the gang simply has to hunt down and beat Kim in a one-on-one fight. He's basically a walking bullseye. To stop this endless parade of violent challengers who are ruining his life, Kim realizes he can't just keep fighting random goons forever. So he goes straight to the gang's leader and cuts a really desperate deal. If Kim can call out and defeat their absolute deadliest prospect, the gang has to leave him alone forever. That prospect? Boss number 4, Dion. An absolutely flawless, undefeated striker who has been known to effortlessly drop 3 grown men in a matter of seconds. When you stack up their stats, it is a massive, almost comical tactical mismatch. Dion is an incredible, lightning-fast striker. But Kim manages to dig up one crucial secret. Dion absolutely hates physical contact and has zero, literally zero, grappling experience. For Kim, who has a super weak physical base but a very high intellect, the path to victory is crystal clear. He has to completely avoid Dion's fists and take the fight straight to the ground. It is brains versus brawn in its purest form. Recognizing this one glaring weakness, Lee puts Kim through a completely grueling 3-week grappling boot camp. Again, we've got a ticking clock building up to the main event. Week 1 is entirely focused on securing the underhook, getting right under the arms. Week 2 introduces the suplex, learning how to literally slam an opponent to the ground. And Week 3 is dedicated 100% to locking in triangle chokes and building up enough stamina to just survive the onslaught. It's a hyper-focused, totally customized curriculum designed to take down one specific target. So when the fight finally goes down, Kim relies on an almost unbelievable, frankly embarrassing tactic. It's the slap and shoot strategy. Dion's striking is just way too fast, so Kim doesn't even try to outpunch him. Instead, he taunts Dion with these humiliating, open-handed slaps right to the face. It sounds absurd, but it actually works. The undefeated fighter becomes completely furious, loses his cool, and throws a massive, wide, angry punch. Kim immediately ducks right under it and successfully secures that underhook clinch he practiced. And man, all that intense ground training pays off in one single fluid motion. Kim locks his hands together, lifts this undefeated striker up into the air, and slams him onto the cement with a flawless suplex. The very second they hit the ground, Kim wraps his legs tightly around Dion and locks in a deep triangle choke. This is a highly technical jiu-jitsu hold that is supposed to be virtually impossible to escape once it's fully secured. It really looks like Kim has pulled off the ultimate upset. I mean, the odds of escaping that choke without any proper grappling knowledge were supposed to be 0. Literally 0%. But Dion somehow defies all logic. Using pure, terrifying, raw power, he simply stands up. He lifts Kim right off the ground while still in the choke, forcibly breaks the hold, tosses Kim aside like a rag doll, and forces the fight right back to their feet. From here, Diane completely flips the script. He essentially downloads Kim's entire strategy in real time. He starts reading Kim's fake jabs flawlessly. He intercepts Kim's tackle attempts with these devastating knee strikes straight to the head. He fakes a jab into a brutal uppercut, and ultimately he pins a bleeding, completely exhausted Kim against the wall, unleashing a relentless, overwhelming barrage of punches. Pinned against that wall, taking arguably the worst beating of his entire life, Kim undergoes this massive emotional evolution. Through all the pain and the blood, a single internal monologue is driving him forward. I don't want to be someone's toy anymore. He just wants to live as his own person. Despite the sheer physical destruction of his body, his mind completely refuses to break. He stays on his feet, fueled by this deep, desperate desire to be free of bullies once and for all. Seeing him on the absolute brink of defeat, Lee finally pulls the trigger on their secret backup plan. She signals Dawson, who happens to be Diane's childhood friend and secret crush, who's watching from the crowd. Right on cue, Dawson drops her disguise and starts screaming humiliating insults at Diane. She calls him trash and loudly announces that she's rooting for Kim to crush him. It is the ultimate brutal psychological distraction, hitting a tough fighter exactly where he is most emotionally vulnerable. It really shows you just how far they are willing to go to win a street fight when there are absolutely no rules. The emotional damage from that betrayal is so devastating that Deanne actually begins to cry right there in front of the entire crowd. But those tears immediately mix with an uncontrollable, terrifying rage. So the huge question is, how in the world will Kim possibly survive an undefeated striker who has just been pushed far, far past his absolute emotional breaking point? It's an incredible study in resilience and strategy. We're definitely going to have to see how this unbelievable character journey concludes next time. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.